Okay, so first of all, I'm going to rename, just get rid of the word template at the top, and then you can just put your name at the front, and say Andy's platform, and then get rid of the word practice as well, and we're going to call it like so-and-so's platformer. So mine's Andy's platformer. That way, when we finish here today, if you're proud of what you've done, then you can upload it to the studio. Now, just to kind of briefly go over what I did to get to this point, all that I've done here is added various sprites, and then I've made my own background. So each of these elements on the screen is a sprite that I can move around and change the attributes for. The keys, the door, the spike, the super jump power up that I made. Don't know if you can tell because it's so professional looking. And then we also have a backdrop here on the right. So if you click on the backdrop on the right, and then you come up to the top left where it says backdrops. So this is similar to like costumes for a sprite. Go up to backdrops, and then that is where you can kind of draw your own background. So if you want, you can kind of add your own platforms in here by clicking, or you can like move the platforms around by like selecting it, and like as I move it, I just resized it by accident. But as I change it, it changes on my screen. I'm not going to do it because I like it how it is. But if you wanted to do that, then you could. Yes, Ducky.
You would have to have a USB phone charger, would you?
Not on me, no. I don't think so. No. Oh, well. The Chromecast has one, but and we're not using it. So yeah, that's fine. There you go. It's like pretty OP one. Like it's very powerful. So I don't know if it will like break your phone, but if we hear an explosion, we'll know why. Okay, so this is the backdrop, and this is just how I've made the various platforms for the game.
How do you make those green lines?
The green lines. So I just used the what would you call this? Square tool, maybe. And then I just chose my fill color up here, and then I just come over to here and I just draw it, just like you would in paint. And as I add a platform, it then adds a platform to my game. This is going to be our platforms, and it's also our floor. What is very important is that you keep all the platforms the same color. You don't technically have to do it, but it will make it much more complicated for you if you don't do that. And we want to keep things nice and simple at this point. If, and we're not going to do this today, we want to add another level, you could right-click and then duplicate this backdrop, and then kind of just like move everything around. And then level 2 will have different platforms, if that makes sense. And you just click on the select tool, come over to the square, and then just make like a different level arrangement. Okay? So that would be how we would add like different levels to our platform game. But for now, I just want you guys pretty much to stick with how it is. Don't make too many major changes. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is code our player. So if you come over to your sprites in the bottom right and click on the blue square. The box is actually the player. It's kind of boring, but you'll see why it kind of makes more sense to just use a very simple sprite while we're learning to do this. Technically, you could use like a cat or whatever sprite you want to do, but because this is all about interacting, we're actually going to make gravity in this game, so that when we kind of come off this platform, we fall down. It's just really easy to just use simple squares for now. But once you understand the idea, you can then go on to use whatever you want, or you can even draw your own person. So once you've clicked on the sprite, the square sprite, you're going to come over to the code area. And the three things we're going to learn today, if we are able to get through it all, are conditions, which is under the control palette here on the left, the orange one here. And we're going to use some if conditions. So in code, an if condition says if something is true, then do this. So if you remember in G Suite, when we used conditional formatting, and we were like, if the number is lower than 100, make this cell red. You remember when we did that? This is the same thing. So if the number is lower than 100, that's what goes into this kind of like hexagon kind of thing. Or is that, I don't know what that shape is, but then do this code, okay? So that's the conditional statements we're going to use. We're also going to use loops. So there's different types of loops that we have, and this just basically makes the code repeat a certain number of times. So we have a repeat loop, which is repeat a certain number of times. There's also a forever loop, and we're going to be using lots of those in games, and they're very common in games, where something happens over and over again, like forever. And then finally, there's the repeat until loop, where a certain piece of code will repeat until a certain condition is met. For instance, like repeat until game over, or something like that. You don't even maybe want the music to play, or give the player the ability to be able to move the player until the game is over. After that, you don't want to give them that ability. And so that will that's where that repeat until comes in. So in order to program, we're going to need a forever loop. So drag on in a forever loop. Let me just zoom in a little bit. And that one. Okay. And then we're going to drag an if loop, or an if condition, inside our forever loop. So this if condition is going to continually be checked. And I want it to start when the green flag is clicked. So we've done this one before. Click in events on the left-hand side here. And then drag in when green flag clicked. And that's going to be the event that starts this code going. Okay. So what we're testing, what we're kind of listening for is the kind of terminology, is a key press. We're going to control the left and right movement and the jumping movement of our little box. So we're forever going to be listening if a certain key is pressed. So because we're listening, we need to sense whether something's happening. We're going to come to our sensing palette. That's the blue on the left. We'll click on sensing. And if you come down kind of to the middle, it says key pressed, ? And it kind of all makes sense in English now. So if key space pressed, then do this. So let's just drag that as it is, and we'll code a jump. Because we're going to have, in our game, where if you press the spacebar key, our sprite, our player jumps. Okay? I'm just going to make sure that my sprite is on the ground. That's great. Now, when I hit the code right now, when I run it and hit the space key, nothing happens because I haven't coded anything. But once I put some code in this box that applies to this sprite, every time I press it, this code inside this box is going to run. So I'm going to stop it for now. Make sure you can keep saving it if it doesn't save it for you. And we're then going to use another type of, let's first of all just have some very kind of robotic jumping going on. So you're going to come over to your motion palette on the left, the top one, and we're going to change the Y position, or the Y coordinate of our sprite up and then back down again. So the position currently of my sprite is minus 185x and minus 140y. This area is broken up into pixels, and what it's saying is, if this point in the middle is 0, 0, is the coordinate, if you've done coordinates before. And then as I come down, I'm now going into minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, up to minus 250. And that's minus 250y. And because I'm not all the way at the bottom, I'm at minus 140, which is about here. And then the x, I'm kind of this far over, which is about minus 185. Okay? So what I'm doing in order to make my sprite jump is to briefly change its y coordinate up a little bit, and then to bring it back down again. Does that make sense? Kind of. Let's do it, and it might make more sense. So you're going to come down into your motion things, and we want to change the y. The y is this way, so that's good for jumping. When we're making the left and right movement, we're going to change x. So come down to where it says change y by, and that's changing y by a certain amount of pixels. We're just going to drag in this change y by 10. And when we run the code now, and we press the space bar, nothing happens. I think it's just running very slowly on mine. Hopefully on yours, he jumped, and it stayed up. And then he just keeps jumping until he's getting to the spike. What's going to happen? Nothing. Because we've not coded it. We've not coded it to happen. But we will make that a deadly spike soon enough. Okay, so jumping is kind of working right now, but it's only going up, so we need it to come back down again because of gravity. So, and also it's not going up very much. So maybe let's change our change y by 10 to change y by 100. And now he'll jump a little bit higher, he or she. It's or non-binary box, whatever. It doesn't really have a gender. And then we're going to use a control thing. Well, actually, let's just code in the change y minus 100 first. So now you're going to grab another change y and put it straight underneath. So we want to kind of change its movement up and then back down again. So whatever you added as your first change y, you're then going to do the minus of that. So I'm going to do minus 100. Okay. But what you'll notice is when you press the space bar now, and if you start it again, nothing happens. The reason for that is because code, I think we talked about this in the first week, runs top to bottom, and it runs like lightning fast. So what's happening is it's going up very quickly and then coming back down to the point that we don't even notice it. I think this happened when we were doing some of the say blocks. So that's when we use the say, then wait, or say for 2 seconds. So we're going to almost do the change y for 2 seconds. We're going to use that wait block again. So we're going to go into, I think it's control on the left, find our wait block that we should be familiar with, to add a little bit of hang time while our square is in the sky. And we'll just do like 0.2. You guys can kind of change it as works for you. But this 0.2 seconds works for me. Okay, now it comes up and down. But it's a little bit robotic. Is it working for you guys? Yeah? Cool. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm actually going to use my repeat 10 block to make that the jumping movement a bit more smooth. So rather than just doing one 100 jump, I'm going to make it do 10 jumps, little 10 jumps. Okay, does that make sense? So it's going to jump the same amount, but it's going to do it in increments. So rather than just going immediately here, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, but it's going to do it very quickly. So it will look more like an actual jump with motion in it. So to do that, I'm just going to pull out the code from in my if block, and I'm going to drag in a repeat 10 times block. This is in the control area, just above the forever loop. And I'm going to drag in 2 of these, because I need it to repeat the up movement and the down movement. Okay, so now I'm going to take the blocks that I removed and insert them back in. So I'll first of all, because you can only kind of take the bottom one off, I'm going to take the bottom one and add it into this second repeat block. And I'm going to change minus 100 to minus 10, because remember it's now doing it 10 times. I'm doing minus 10 times, which makes minus 100. I'm going to put my wait block in between the 2 repeat blocks. And then I'm going to put my last one in the up direction and change it to positive 10 rather than positive 100.
What did you change to keep 100? What would happen?
it would go 1,000, which means it would just go off the screen. Or it probably wouldn't. It probably just get stuck here and then come back down here. Go for it if you want. And now you can see the movement is much nicer, much smoother. It should be on your screen. Mine is really laggy and horrible, but because I'm recording my screen at the same time. Does it look good for you? Yeah? Sweet. Kind of. Okay. It should be at least a bit better than what we had before. So we're now going to add, so that's our space coded. Let's talk a little bit about logic operators. I think we briefly touched on this a couple of weeks ago. If we come over to the green operator menu, and we're going to go down to our logical operators. These three operators here, the and, or, and not operators, are our logic operators. Okay, so what this is doing is adding logic to our program. So at the moment, if my spacebar key is pressed, my square laggily jumps into the air. But I want to code it so that if my spacebar key is pressed or my up arrow key is pressed, makes it jump. Because some people prefer to use up arrow keys, and I'm going to say left and right. Some people like using like WASD instead. If you want to make it two-player, you could do two sprites and do one that's W for jump and one that's up for jump. But I want it so that I can press the spacebar key or the up arrow key. So I'm just going to remove the spacebar key sensing from there. And you can see that these logic operators are the same shape. So they can be dragged in to an if condition. And this creates some logic. So it's saying if this happens or this happens. Sometimes we might say if this is true or this is true, then do this. So I want it to this code to happen if the spacebar key is pressed, or, and I'm going to duplicate it by right-clicking and pulling it into the next one, the up arrow key is pressed. And I'm going to access the up arrow key by pressing the drop down and selecting up arrow. So now the code will run whether you press the spacebar key or the up arrow key. Does that work for you? Just to demonstrate some more additional logic, I don't want you to do this, but I'm going to use an AND operator instead of an OR operator, and we're going to use this again later. But just to demonstrate how it works, if I'm using an AND operator instead, what do you think I need to do to make my square jump now? I need to press them at the same time. So now if I press the space bar, nothing happens. If I press the up arrow, nothing happens. I need to, in order for this code to work, this has to be true and this has to be true at the same time. If I press them both at the same time, he falls into the ground. Just as I expected would happen. That's not true. I think it's because I accidentally put this here and I didn't mean to do that. That would work now. So now when I press them both at the same time, he jumps up and down. That's not the kind of functionality we want. We want the OR operator. So, but we will use the AND operator to make our door here function. So what we're going to add in a bit is some functionality where if our player has the key 1 and key 2, then it can get through the door. If it only has key 1, it can't get through the door. You need both in order to get through the door. That's where we use an AND logic operator. Okay, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So I'm going to use an OR operator here. Cool. What I'm going to do now is actually right-click the whole code block and duplicate it. Because I'm now going to program a different button. We're going to program our left and right. I'm just going to put it underneath. And we're going to delete most of the code here. So we're going to delete our, well, we're going to pull out one of our sensing blocks. And then we'll delete the OR operator because we only want one key to make this code work. And then we're going to pull out all of the repeat 10, wait 10, repeat 10. So you should have something like this. And we're going to change from the space key to, let's just do the right arrow key first. And drag that in. So now we're forever listening if the right arrow key is pressed. This one is a little bit easier. What we're now going to do is change the X direction in the positive direction, which is this way, because the right arrow key is pressed. You're going to come up to motion. And we don't need the repeat here because because people tend to like hold the key down rather than a space where they just tap it. So we're kind of adding our own repeat block by holding the key down. So we're now just going to, you could use the move 10 steps, but that relies on which direction your block is facing. We're just going to do change X by. So find the change X by block, just here, and drag that in. Oh, that one. And I think this one you can keep as 10. It should work pretty nicely, just as 10. And that's it. That's our right arrow. So now if you hold the right arrow down, the thing will move right. Okay?
It stops there when it falls.
Hmm?
When it stops at point of fall.
Let's see. Oh, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just goes over the super jump. Power up. What we need to do now, again, to do the left arrow, is just right click this whole code block, duplicate it, go underneath, change it to if the left arrow key is pressed, and then change X by -10. Now you should have a super cool game. And we can all go home because we have a super cool game. And that's great. Brilliant. Has everybody got a functional square now? We'll call it the fun square. Alright. Cool. After this, we're going to add some gravity and things are going to get really cool. Okay, so we're staying in our square sprite. And we're going to keep using our forever loops and our if statements. But we're now going to check if our player is in the air or not. Okay, this is getting a bit weird, but we're now coding gravity into our game. So that if the player jumps, it will bring it back down. Now we've hard-coded gravity in it right now, where we've said go up, then go back down. But there technically is no gravity. So what would happen, and in fact you guys can test this out by pulling up here, if you went to the right, walked off your platform, we're just levitating in midair. What we want to happen is for it to fall down until it reaches the floor or a platform. And you can also see that I can jump while in midair, which is weird as well. Okay, so we're now gonna add some gravity so that your square actually interacts with the platforms. So again, we're gonna right-click our code and duplicate it. This time, however, we're not coding a particular button. We're getting a different kind of sensing condition. So you're going to delete the key pressed by dragging it over here to the left. And I'm going to delete our change X thing. I'm going to go back to our sensing menu. And we're going to find our color is touching color block. Color is touching color block. So it's just here. Color is touching color. This is how we're going to code gravity. So you're going to drag your color is touching color block. In sensing, yeah. Into the if statement. Good. Good, good, good. Cool. Then you're going to click in the first color area. And then you're going to choose I don't know why, there we go, the little eyedrop tool. And you're going to bring it over to your sprite, and we're going to say if, and you're going to click on the pink area along the bottom. This is where all my design decisions make sense. So you're going to click in the pink area. We're going to say if this pink color is touching, and then you click in the next color thing, choose the color picker, and then choose the green. This is why I was saying keep all of your platforms and floors the same color. And I just want you to move your sprite into midair. So what we're saying is, if this color on my sprite is touching this color, then I want something to happen. Now this is actually a little bit backwards because we're coding gravity here, what we're really testing for, what we're really listening for, is whether this color is not touching this color. If pink is not touching green, it means it's in midair. That's when we want gravity to kick in. Does that make sense? Cool. So we're actually going to go back to our operators, and we're going to use our not operator. That was our third operator. Now we went through all the operators, which is great. Drag in that not operator somewhere kind of just in the white area on your project. And then we're going to drag our color is touching block inside our not operator. So now we're saying, if the pink is not touching the color, then do this. If pink is not touching green, then do this. And what we're going to do now, we actually already have kind of gravity code written, is come up to our jump area. We're actually now, because we have gravity, we don't need to hard code gravity to come back down. Gravity is going to kick in itself. So you're going to delete or first of all, take it out, the change y by in your jumping code. Take that out in the second repeat by 10. And then you're going to delete the second repeat by 10, if that makes sense. So you should, now when the spacebar is pressed, your sprite should only jump up. It should not come back down again. And then you're going to take your change y by 10 and move it down into your gravity code. Are you keeping up with yourself? Yep, cool. We'll drag it down. Oops. And if we did it correctly, and you click the green flag, it should work. Now, why is that? So now when I pick my, oh, he fell past it. Okay, so it's kind of working. What I maybe want to do. Okay. Is your jumping working on yours? Because it's not working on mine anymore. Mine's just falling down. Maybe, yeah.
Mine goes up, it doesn't go down.
Okay. Let me just see why that's buggy. It's all part of coding. Okay, yeah. So what's probably the reason here is as our as our box kind of jumps into the air, our gravity code is kicking in immediately, and it's happening like while this code is taking place. So they're kind of fighting against each other. So just for the sake of this one, we are going to get rid of our repeat 10, and we're just going to change y by 100 again. So it will be a little bit more robotic. There would be a way to get around this, but we don't really have time to do that today. And what that would basically look like is kind of gravity to stop working when the user presses the jump key, if that makes sense, for the time that you want it to work. But we need to make variables with that, and now, in theory, I think, yeah, it works. But now I can like jump into infinity. Yes.
When I put mine over.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So your gravity is working sideways. So you need to change y, not change x. Kind of
It's
set.
already fun like that.
Huh?
That's how it is for me.
Yeah, like infinite Oh. Press Control Z. You delete it by accident. What I might have you do. Restore. I'm not sure why it's not working. What I'm going to do is really quickly just publish this as where it's at so that you can access this code. Let me just save that. So now I think so when you come back to Scratch and this project code should have changed. So go back to APS Studio. And then Studios. APS Studio. Yeah, the undo button is really temperamental in Scratch, so just be really careful about deleting everything. And then you're gonna click Andy's platformer this time, and then remix that project, and hopefully it will be kind of caught up to where we were at. Okay. Cool. Yes. So what's kind of buggy about my program is that if I hold the space bar down, he just flies into the air, which I don't want to happen.